months or so, please feel free to drop me a line on that also, and I'll try and figure out if I can find someone to cover that particular topic. Oops. Normally we meet up afterwards at the boardwalk. The gentleman that normally walks us over there is not here tonight. Can anybody volunteer to take a group of folks over to the boardwalk? We just need an MS employee that can badge people in, as it were. No? You can do it? So if you can circle up around this gentleman, the boardwalk is a bar that's just kind of across the street over the Microsoft Commons. Folks can meet up afterwards, have a few drinks, chat, whatever. Meet up with the gentleman here in the second row. That would be awesome. Next meeting we have coming up is going to be June 5th. It's a gentleman from Spokane. His name is Mark Michaelis. He wrote a couple of books called Essential C#, and he'll be covering C# 7 in quite a bit of detail. And with that, I will hand it off to Joe and let Joe talk about bot framework tactics tonight. I should put a couple t-shirts up here you can give away if people ask good questions or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Up to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Let me go ahead and pop this thing up here. Okay, so I'm going to talk tonight about the bot framework. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been developing for about 30 years, but I've been doing .NET since 2000. And I just got in with C# and loved it and took off from there. I've been an MVP for the last 13 years. I've written about 7 books. I'm working on my 8th right now on this topic right here. I'm going to write a book called Programming the Microsoft Bot Framework by Microsoft Press, because I'm really excited about this technology, and that's why I'm glad to be here tonight to tell you more about it. So here's what I want to do. I've been giving this presentation for about a year, talking about introduction to the bot framework, but what I'm doing is I'm kind of shifting it now. I'm not talking about the basics, because now it's been out for about a year, and a lot of people really understand the basics, or you can go out and get it. What I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to run through these basics really quick, and then I'm going to take some of the things that I and other people have been learning over the last year or so, and add a few techniques on top of that, and add a little bit of experience. And like I said, it's only been out about a year, and it's still in beta. So I'm learning, a lot of other people are learning and everything, but it's a fun journey. So I hope you like what we're going to cover tonight. So I'm going to introduce chatbots. I'm going to talk about something called activities, because there are these messages coming into your bot that you want to handle. Not everything is text. So there's a few interesting ones that's going to be useful to you. I'm going to talk about customizing form flow. And I'll explain to you what form flow is. It's a way to build a bot that gives you easy navigation with just a class. I'll talk about something new called an iScorable, because when you're building a bot and you've got these dialogues that help you navigate from one question to the next and everything, sometimes you need to talk to the person out of bounds. These iScorables, they let somebody say something that doesn't go with your flow, and you can intercept that and react to it, just like real people do. And also, I'm going to talk about natural language processing, because when we're talking to bots, we're trying to talk conversationally, and we want to let people communicate freely, and we want to take those communications and take it and translate it into something that our bot can understand, that our code can process logic on. So there's a translation process that goes on there. This is very powerful, and I want to talk about it. And then finally, I want to mention the Azure Bot Service, because most of the bots you're going to see in the first part of this presentation are going to be like web services. But Azure Bot Service is a service that you put your bot on and scale it out. And so that's one of the main features of it, but I'll talk about it more. So, anybody got any questions about what we're going to talk about? Does that sound good? Cool. So, there's probably a million definitions of a chatbot out there right now. So, of course, I'm excited about chatbots and I want to talk about it, so I came up with my own definition. So, it's just an application that we write, available via messaging platforms. You know, messaging platforms like Skype and Slack and Messenger and Kik and all of these applications where you can just type and text to each other, SMS. Well, those are the platforms I'm talking about. While there's a lot of us developers who have been in the business for a long time, we've seen things like console applications, we've seen GUIs, we've used a mouse for many years, and more recently, we're starting to get our mobile devices right there. We get touch interfaces and everything. But now, what bots give us the ability to do is to communicate with our computers via text. This is not a console application, because the concept of a console application is that you start the application and give it commands. This is different. With a bot, you talk to it. You say, hey, could you schedule this appointment for this? Just like Cortana. Also, think about what Amazon is doing with Alexa. Alexa is very conversational. You just talk to it. Right now, with the bot framework, it's primarily using these messaging services like Messenger and Slack and so on. But it's only a matter of time until this conversation turns into a device that's in our house, that's ubiquitous, that's in our car and in our home and everywhere we are. And we're just going to talk to our computers. And that's what I mean about this conversational user interface. It's not a graphical user interface, it's going to be conversational. And the big deal is that a lot of people, we're technologists. We use our applications and we learn whatever we need to, how to use them. But in the grand scheme of things, think about the average user on the street. Aren't they just sick and tired of constantly learning a new user interface every time you turn around? They would just love to talk to their computer. Bot framework. So this bot framework, here's my shot at architecture right here. And this is interesting because it's showing the different parts of the communication infrastructure that you're going to talk to. Remember I was talking about Slack and Microsoft Teams and Skype and Messenger? Those are channels. SMS is a channel. Email is a channel. And that's one of the big differences between Microsoft's offering and other people's offering. It's multi-platform. There are other multi-platform bot frameworks out there, but if you think about the other bot platforms out there, like Facebook's Messenger, one platform. Slack's bots, one platform.
It's just some helper class client, which is used to create the object.
Okay, that is a helper class.
Yeah, but the thing is, you in the response you don't return anything but okay status.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's probably hitting back.
Yes, and you know what? If you want to send me email and everything, I'll look at that.
Let's continue, maybe.
I do have one more question. I don't even know if this
Yeah, another
makes
question.
sense at this point, but can you send more than one reply message back?
The question is, can you send more than one reply message back? Yes. Yeah.
And it'll deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll go in like different. You can see it. It'll go back as different replies. It won't aggregate them together.
Right.
You go that one will go, and then the next one will go. So anyway, let's look at dialogues. Okay, so with dialogues, this is a way to kind of like start and guide a conversation. So what happens is, I created this dialogue, it derives from my dialogue. And this start async is kind of like the entry method to the dialogue. And so what happens is, when this dialogue gets started, it calls start async. I'm using this context object right here and calling wait on it. Essentially what I'm doing is, I'm saying that this is the next step in the sequence. So with dialogues, what I'm doing is a waterfall type operation where I say, okay, I want to do this, and here's where you go next. And that's what you do, step by step.
Could you zoom into 125 from 150?
Zoom into what?
Percentage, the 125 percentage of the zoom of the.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm using the side dialog context, and this dialog context gives me access to kind of like the environment that I'm working with. And one of the things I use it for is to like post messages back to the bot. So what happens is after this start async, I'm saying wait on conversation started async, and it sends that message over here. And in conversation started, see these two parameters? I have that dialogue context. So this goes along everywhere I need to do something in this dialogue. But I also have this argument, and it's an awaitable, which is a bot framework type. And I await to get that argument, which is a message activity. And see how I do context post async? Again, it's just sending a message back to the bot connector. And then I'm using this prompt dialogue. Now with dialogues, you have these different types of prompt dialogues. This one's a choice. You also have confirm and number and choice and different kinds you can use. But what this does is it sends a message to the user so that they'll see that message in the emulator or the channel that they're using, and they can respond. And when they respond, this resume specifies what's the next step in the progress. So I'm going to say, hey, choose one of these options. And here I said enum get values, product options. And this is an enum. It has those options right there. So they're going to get a menu. They're going to pick one. And I'm going to resume right here where I can await that argument and see how I'm saving that product options in a field right here. So, this is stateless. I'm going back and forth and asking questions and going on to the next step. And every step of the way, I get the argument and I save it in one of these fields. Now remember when I talked about the bot connector and I had that little state service right there? It's using that state service because my dialogue is serializable.
Can you cover over this serializable? What is this serializable?
Well, so what happens when you have to send data across a wire? It usually goes via serialization. So you take it from object form and put it into a serialization format. In this case, it's JSON.
With this particular attribute, it used to be serializable in runtime serialization, which was actually deprecated binary serialization. I guess it's something new.
Well, this is actually this is the same serializable attribute. System serializable, yeah. It's the same one. And this is serializing this to JSON. Yeah, the bot framework's taking care of that. Okay, so this here I got a choice, and I get a couple choices there. And when I get to the end, then I say context post async, because what I'm doing is a bug report dialog right here. So let's see this working so that you can actually see what's going on there. This is what I'm doing is I'm putting a different port number on these so I can avoid caching when I switch between chatbots. Now go 3976, connect. And I'll just say hi. And if you recall that prompt dialog choice, I took those options and put them up here as a button list. So I've got a choice. I click that button, or I can type down here and say Office. Either way it works. This time I'm going to click Mac and provide a detailed description, broken. And then there's my confirmation. I'll say yes. And then he took all of that information, and the state was saved on the state service. So at the end, I have my state, and I can actually submit a bug report through the database. So that was dialogue. Any more questions about that one?
Can you go back to the code real quick?
Yeah.
And up to the top where your class definition was. So, okay, so you inherit from iDialog objects. And what's object in this case? Is that?
The reason I used object in this case is because you can like chain dialogues and everything and get return objects back out of them and everything. And I'm not doing that in this case, so I don't need it.
And then the state that's being maintained for you, that's coming from iDialog, and the serialization that's getting handed back and forth, is that?
Yeah, because it's a dialogue and everything, the bot framework has all of these dialogue management types and everything, and it's handling the serialization of serializing that state when it sends a result back to the bot connector.
Okay, so that's where the state is, okay.
I have a question. Regarding the interface and dialogue, you said you're using object because you're not interested in the type. Do they have a non-generic interface, iDialog, or do you have to specify object?
Do they have a non-generic interface? I don't recall if they do or not. Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where, yeah, that's how it works. That's what I did. Guilty. So let me show you the next kind of dialogue. That was a regular iDialog, and the next one is form flow. Here's my sixth project. Okay, so here's my form flow form. Again, it's serializable, but it's just a class. This is the same concept as the last dialogue. I'm doing a bug report. But here's my state, and I'm using enums. Remember the product options that I had in the last item? And this one's platform options. And I put a 1 on that one because when the bot framework shows that menu, sometimes you can have a no preference, which is going to be the 0 option. But on this bug report, this is just a class with properties. It could be fields if you want, but I like using properties. And this platform one is a list of those items. That means when I'm going through the dialogue, I can pick more than one. And problem description is just a string. And then here on this build form, what it's doing is using this form builder class that references the bug report, and it's using reflection to go through this class, pick out those properties, and automatically generate questions. And it handles asking questions, taking the answers, and filling in those properties automatically for me. All I did is define that class and use this boilerplate clip code, and boom, I've got a plot. This is a really quick way to go out and prototype something, or try something out, or get a Q&A form without trying too hard. So let me run this. and port number is 3975. And the whole experience for this is different because remember the dialogue, how I stepped you through? This has a whole lot more
You have
functionality.
different, you have to connect to 7.5.
Oh, I didn't connect to the right one. Thank you. That's great, because that would not have worked as soon as I had done something form project-wise.
Hopefully the other box not offended that
So it says that's not an option. Okay, so I get a nice error message. So I'll say help. All of a sudden I'll get help. That's right out of the box. I didn't have to do nothing. All I did was I defined that form. And then I'm going to go, okay, office, and I'll go to the next one. And see how it gives me a 1, 2, or a 3, because I can select multiple options. I'll say 1 and 2. And there's my problem description. And that's an automatic confirmation. I didn't add that confirmation, I just got it for free. And let me say status. Say that's my selection. Right there, there's my status right there. It came back and gave me that. And I'm going to say no. And then it says, okay, well, what do you want to change? Okay, I'll go back to platform. Or I can jump ahead. I can say, let me go to product. I'll just type the name of the property that I want to go to. And see how I'm jumping back and forth and navigating? And I'm getting all that for free. Questions about that?
How does it figure out the order in which, like, how did it figure out which was the first question to be asked?
Oh, okay, so it hasn't figured out the order. It's since it's doing reflection, it's going by the order that the properties are in the class.
So if you switch the platform product, the first question would have been which platform are you using?
Right, if I switch them. And I'll show you in a minute how you change that.
Is a serializable attribute required?
Yes, serializable is required because if you don't serialize it and everything, then your state's not going to be saved between questions.
Is there a pilot error that happens when you don't include that?
I don't know if there's a compiler error there, but I think, you know, in normal serialization where, what if I put a complex object in there and everything, and that object was not serializable, and then I would get a compiler, or I get a runtime error?
I ask because I can imagine being a developer Friday night at 6 o'clock, and I've tried to serialize the attribute. I'm going, why is this not working? So do you know if the documentation makes it clear that you need to have that serializable attribute?
Yeah, it really does. And even in my book, I'm making it a big deal of making sure that people know it, because I've done that. I've been
The form builder should catch it when you try to build the form.
say that again?
A form builder definitely can catch it at runtime. At startup, the runtime will catch it.
Oh, okay. The runtime will catch it at startup. Okay.
You can easily just comment it out and try press F5 and see what happens. Just comment on the serializable and press F5 to see if it's going to catch.
Oh,
It doesn't take that long.
oh, just say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, because I don't ever recall serializable being a compile time. Okay. There you go. That's good. Runtime serialization. Okay, so that's good. That takes us over here. Let me go back to the this dialogue and show you how that dialogue gets started. Because if this is a message, I'm using this conversation class, I've got to send async, and this is how it hands over control to that dialogue. So bot framework picks that up and runs it for us.
I have a quick question for you. Is there any performance issues related to just doing reflection on those responses? Let's say like I have like 5,000 people just happen to be kicking out at the same time. Is there an issue?
Yeah, so the question was a performance issue because of reflection. And you know what? My gut, I haven't benchmarked it, but my gut feeling is that that's a real concern, is that there might be.
I don't think it's, because you are sending things over the wire. And if you look at Web API, HTTP client internals, you see the huge stack there and how much they actually use to include a reflection. This is nothing compared to the cost of actually sending the message.
Yeah, and so another concern is, the performance would not be as good, but doesn't matter because in relation to other things. Because that's true. This stuff's going across the wire. That's where all our time is being taken right there. Okay, so this was the dialogue, and in the form flow, it's a little bit more involved because I have this conversation send async, but I have to finagle with this a little bit because I have this form. See that build form that I showed you where it's actually setting up the form builder and doing reflection and everything? Okay, so I've got that. I've got to take the form dialog from form, and that gives me a dialog to use. And then this chain is very powerful and everything, but I'm just using this from because it's using something called the dialog stack. I can switch from one dialog to the next by going on the stack. So I push a dialog on the stack. That's my current dialog and everything. So somebody comes in and asks me a question and everything, and I need to go into another part of the conversation. Well, like in my regular iDialog, if I come in there and I get that question from the user or that response, and I say I want to start another dialogue, then I do context call this other dialogue. When I do that call, it puts that new dialogue on the dialogue stack, and it takes over. When I'm done with that dialogue, I say dialogue done. It comes off the stack and back to the other conversation. This chain from is actually doing that. It's taking this dialogue I got from form and pushing that onto the dialogue stack. And so I got a dialogue, I say send async, pass control over to that. And see how I'm going in and I'm keeping my webhook very lightweight, passing everything off, just like you would a regular application. So that was my quick intro to bot framework and everything. And now I want to start talking about a couple other things that I think are going to be useful. So in the post method, you saw where we had where the activity type is message, right? Well, we can get different types of activities from the bot connector. Some of them I have listed here is like conversation update, when somebody's added or removed from the conversation. Right now, the only multi-user conversation that you can have is via email with the bot framework and everything, but in the future it may happen that you've got group conversations. But you want to know when conversation update happens because this is your first time to reach out and talk to the customer. If this is the first time they've communicated with you. Delete user data, that's another event that's important too because there are nations around the world that have laws that says that if the user wants to delete their personally identifiable information, then you have to do it. And so it's important to handle that so that you're internationally compliant. And it seems like the right thing to do, doesn't it? If somebody doesn't want you to have the data. There are other activities like contact relation. Like for instance, if somebody disconnects from your chat bot, you might want to take them off your notification list or something like that. And there's a typing thing so that when the user is typing, you'll get a notification. But I thought about that some, and I'm saying, well, that isn't as useful as I once thought it was. I thought, hey, that's cool. The user's typing. Maybe I just won't bombard them with another message. But here's the thing, is this is not necessarily going to be just one web service. If you're successful, this thing's going to be on Azure or a cloud service that's scaled out. So you've got typing that comes into this one, and I'm sending a message out on that one. And so you've got a coordination issue right there. So I don't know how useful that really is.
Wouldn't the state server manage that for you?
Wouldn't the state server manage that for you?
Because it would have to maintain sessions for each instance of the bot.
Yeah, but to know, I don't know that the state server knows what instance it should be talking to. So I'm unaware of whether that's true. Okay, so let me show you how to handle those activities. So over here on this form flow bot, over on my post, oh, that's not the right one. Let me put that. Oh, okay. Here it is. So this was another silly bot that I did early on because I wanted to play with activities. And it's called PC bot because it reacts to everything. Thank you. I thought I was dying up here. Okay, so I got this post and I've got this React Async, message handler, React Async, and I'm passing all of my activities to that rather than handling them there. And over a message handler, I have a switch statement for all these activities. And here's all the activity types that I'm switching on right here. And the one that I think is probably one of the most important is the conversation update. And I'm doing two things here. First of all, I'm detecting, is this the first time the person ever talked to me? And I'm using the state client. So remember I talked about the bot connector and the state client there? You can actually put state there. You can save stuff and get it back off. So I got an instance of this state client, and then on the state client I got bot state, get user data. And that says get user data because there's 3 types of state that you can hold up here. I'm using user data for just this user. But there's also conversation data. So for all the users that might be in a conversation, right now that's only 1, so that's not as useful as one might think. But there's also something called private data, which is a combination of user and a conversation. I'm just using user data. Okay, so I have that user data right there, and I'm saying, okay, if it's null, that means I've never seen this user before. This is a new customer. And what I do is down here, if it's a new customer, I create a new user info object. This is my own object. And again, so you don't find yourself in serialization help, but serializable already. And these basic types are serializable already. Okay, so that's my custom type, and I got a username and when they join. And if I already know them, then I use that user data to go out to the state service and get the user info right there because I know it's already there. And then I have a little logger right there that says, is this the first visit? If it is, then I've got another one to say, is this a chatbot? Because if their channel account ID for the current channel account, and a channel account is like either the user or the bot, it's got an ID and a name in it. So if the ID is the same as the bot's ID, then they're talking to the chatbot. And in this activity type, conversation update, it's got a members added and members removed. And they're just collections and everything. And I'm saying, if any of the members added in this collection is the chatbot, then I'm creating a reply, hi, welcome to BCBot. Because this is the first time they came, so I'm saying, hi, this is my first welcome message. Otherwise, I say, welcome back. So what I've done is I've used this as an ability to personalize my chatbot by knowing a little bit more about the user to make them feel, oh, okay, welcome. And then I don't sound stupid because if I said, hi, welcome to PCBot every single time, then that's not very personal. But there's another thing about this that is very important when you're writing a bot, because when the user first comes to your bot, you want a good welcome message. One of the worst things you can do is you go out to Skype and start downloading bots or start using some of the bots on the other services and everything, and then you got to figure out how to use them. This is an opportunity to go out and give them a good message to say, hey, this is what I do. You can type this to do that, that to do that, and this to get more help. Something that welcomes them and onboards them a whole lot easier. And actually, this is a requirement to get into the Skype registry.
What level of formatting do you have?
What level of what?
Of text formatting do you have?
What level of text formatting? You've got regular text, of course. You've got HTML, and you have markup. So this is really a great place to do that, and I think you can't get your bot approved without a good in the Skype bot registry without a good welcome message. And when I'm done, when I update that, I update the last visit right there, and I set that property, and then I push it to the bot state service right there. And if I've got this exception here, because if I get an error, let me think. I was getting an error because okay. Here's what I was getting. Remember, I was talking about when you scale out your bot, you've got multiple instances of your post right there. You can get an optimistic concurrency exception. That's what this is doing. That's handling the HTTP operation exception that occurs because when I'm using the emulator and talking to this, sometimes it's sending messages to the bot so fast that while one is writing, another one's reading, and it's changed. And you get an exception out of that. I'm handling that, and I'm going back and saying, oh, okay, let me get this state new and fresh, and then write it again. Okay, remember I was talking about the delete scenario? I handled that right there. The delete user, I'm saying get state client right there, and there's a delete state for user that I can call by passing the channel ID and the from ID. And by the way, the channel ID is a unique ID for whatever channel you're on. If it's Skype, it says Skype. If it's Facebook, it says Facebook. And if it's the emulator, it says I think something like bot emulator. And channel ID says emulator for the bot emulator. Okay. So let me move on to the next thing. I've got a section on customizing form flow. And I'm going to talk about that really quick because I'm probably running out of time, aren't I, Chris? How am I doing?
Half an hour.
About a half hour? Okay. So I won't take too much time on this. But we can also customize form flow. Remember I was talking about form flow, how it does reflection on the fields, and somebody asked about the order of those fields. Well, we can actually change the order around and dynamically define fields and everything. Because the big problem that I did have originally was those fields were defined as enums. And it's like product options. Why should that ever be an enum? Never. And what I'm going to do is say, over here I've got a new bug report, and I'm customizing this because you can add things like templates to say, okay, I'm going to change the default messaging. And these are all defined in the bot framework documentation of what you can do. So if I've got an enum select one, that's the message, enum select many there. And these little code nuggets right here are called pattern language. That's the name of the field. And this says, give me a menu. And then you've got a bunch of other objects, options right here because if you might have noticed on the other form flow, when I have multiple items, they kind of like strung them together one by the other. This has to go on a separate line. So you have a lot of customizations with these attributes. But let me go down here and show you this new build form. Here's that form builder. But now look what I'm doing. I'm saying filled. So now I can switch those fields around. And not only can I switch them around, I can use this field reflector to go in and define the field on the fly. See that get products? Imagine that's a database query right there where you get your product list right there. And then you can define each thing that goes in there. So that's a dynamically defined field. Sometimes you want to validate things. On this version field, I've got a dotted version. I want to make sure that in between the dots people put numbers. I don't know if that's a valid validation or not, but I went here to validate, create a validation response, and I changed that is valid right there to false if it doesn't validate. And then you've got confirmation, non-completion, a lot of customization there. So, the next thing I'm going to show you iScoreable. This is a nice way to handle things that are out of band conversations. You know how in the dialogue we've been going step by step, you ask one question and then you go to the next part and then the next part. It's like, well, if I'm talking to a travel agent and I'm booking my trip, my next vacation, they may be saying, okay, well, what day you want to go, how many people are going and everything, and then the customer will say, so what's the weather in Mexico? And everything, and say, well, that's not something that's in the bot and everything. You want to be able to take that and maybe be able to handle it out of bounds and have some type of half-intelligent response to it. Maybe use the Bing search and go grab the weather and give that to them. But these scoreables, you implement this interface right here. And what happens is that on this prepare async right there, that helps you set up all of the state of the scoreable. And the has score says, okay, under the prepare, if if I got this prepare and whatever the user said came into this scoreable, the prepare says, can I handle it? And he'll say yes or no and set himself, okay, yeah, I can do that. So has_score will say yes. Get_score will return a score between 0 and 1. That's the probability of how well he can handle that. And the post async is when he wins, because there's going to be a bunch of scoreables out there. It's going to be like who has the best score. He's going to pick them. And so if he wins, he gets the post async that says, okay, I got the score. I'm going to use post async to respond to the user with my message. And then done is for cleanup work. So let me show you a scoreable real quick. There it is. Okay, so my scenario was, if I'm doing something, maybe I've got a Lewis dialogue, I'm doing natural language processing or regular dialogue, and I don't have a help like I do with FormFlow. What if I want to add help to my application? And so this help scoreable, I'm using the scoreable base that implements the iScoreable and does a lot of stuff for me. But I'm using this iBot user so I can talk back to the user. And I'm using the built-in dependency injection, and the bot framework uses a DI container called AutoFact to inject this bot user, because I'm going to use it later. And here's my preparation. What I do is I build a regular expression to say, did they say help in their message? And if they did, then I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to return that value. Otherwise, I'm going to return null. Okay, and that value that comes out of here, this string right here, gets passed down here to has_score. And I say, okay, well, if state equals null, that means he returned null, so I don't have a score, so get_score never gets called. But if I do want to handle it, get_score returns a number, and then I can use that bot user and post a message back to that user right there. And so if I run this, and go to, there's my exception. Okay, and then say hi, and that'll get translated. No, this is the bug report dialog. So I'm in the middle of this thing. And then I say help, then that scoreable went and grabbed that thing and responded for me out of band. So this is a way for you to handle those out of band type scenarios. Any questions about that? Okay. Natural language processing with Lewis. So Lewis is a way for you to let people just type anything to your bot. And it's kind of like using Cortana, where you say, Cortana, please set my appointment to this. Okay, same thing. But here's how it works. It works based on things called intents and entities. And an intent is what the user intended to do. So let me go out to the Lewis site real quick. You go to Lewis AI. And you build these things called models. And so the models have utterances. And utterances are all of the things that you could possibly say to a chatbot. But you classify each of the utterances based upon intent. And And I have a few models out here, my apps. And I'm going to go to this contact info. And right here, it gives me some stats on it and everything. But I've got these things called intents and entities. So on the intents, I've got two intents. You get none by default because none is a catch-all for when it doesn't recognize something else. But over on change info, you go in here and you start typing in things. I would like to change my email address. I'd like to change my phone number. May I change my my email? Or maybe may I change my postal address and stuff like that. And you just type all of the ways that you can possibly say that. And see this contact type? Contact type is an entity. And so I say contact type is just a simple entity. And what Lewis is going to do, it's going to take this utterance, it's going to recognize it. And when I say my email, my phone number, whatever, it's going to put that in there. And so somebody says something to my bot takes the message, sends it to Lewis, and gets back an object that matches an intent and an entity, and then I know what to do with it.
So with this setup, it will not catch, I need to change. You have to enter all possible.
The question is, you have to enter all possible. No, you don't have to enter all possible ones because you go down here and train it, and it's using, I forget the exact algorithm, but it's using some type of a machine learning statistical method to approximate what the intent should be. And if you've got multiple intents, it'll give a probability to each one when the response comes back, and the highest level probability is going to hit the intent matching in your code. So let me show you the code that goes with that. But anyway, down here on the publish, you're going to get a key, and you hit that train, it goes in and trains this thing, and then you say publish, that puts it out there and ready to use. And then, see your keys right there? You can grab them there. Question?
When you're dealing with a large data set, is there a pretty common way of determining which are the best intents that you should handle or not?
When you're doing a large data set, I'm not sure. I'm not